Welcome back to the AI Ripple Effect podcast, everybody. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined all the way from Pittsburgh by Michael St. Julien, who is the branch director of Pittsburgh for Circle Logistics Incorporated. Michael, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be here with you, sir.
Great. Really looking forward to getting stuck in and hearing more about what you guys do. But initially, why don't you give us a little bit of a background, Michael, if you would, on your journey to where you are today, a little bit about Circle Logistics, the services you guys provide, and who your customers typically are.
Sure. I've been in the business, Adrian, for 35 years. After a college football injury, I ended up getting an internship at Roadway Express in Adelanto, California. At the time, Roadway had 432 facilities nationwide. They were the #1 LTL company in the nation. If you remember, in July of 1980, President Jimmy Carter signed off on the Motor Carrier Act, which deregulated the transportation industry. Prior to 1980, there was only 18,000 trucking companies in the United States. Fast forward where we are today, taking carriers, freight forwarders, truck brokers, etc., there's 1.2 million. So in 1990, Roadway was a unionized company, been around for about 100 years, and I started off as an intern there. I was the only intern retained and was asked to join the management training program. You're supposed to have a bachelor's degree before you go into the management training program. I only had my associates at the time, but I had done a well enough job for them to ask me to stay on. Fast forward 6 years later, I was promoted 13 times within the 6 years that I was with Roadway, and I ended my career at Roadway as the terminal manager of the Los Angeles facility, a large grade 5 facility. I was 26 years old, running a $100 million P&L with 800 plus employees, and I was heavily recruited by a company by the name of Eagle Global Logistics. And the individual, Jim Crane, who owned and founded Eagle, was looking for strong operators. They had built a great sales platform in 1994 during the LTL strike. Jim was able to get his team to go out and get into those unionized companies and pull all that high-tech freight out and get it delivered to customers like Compaq and Dell and, Western Digital, Ingram Micro, Intel, all of them. It was a huge deal because it was on the verge of that dot-com bubble. It was the tech revolution that was going on at the time. And we were able to, I told him no in 1996. He came back in 1997 and said he wasn't taking no for an answer. And I was able to join him in 1997 running his LA facility. At the time, Eagle had 92 facilities nationwide. LA was number 1, 2, or 3 between Houston, which had Compaq, Austin, which had Dell, and LA, we had a ton of customers and big business. When I went over to Los Angeles, it was obviously eye-opening to me. When you work in the LTL world, I'm sitting there fighting Teamsters for 6 years, trying to get Teamsters to be productive. And look, great drivers, great employees. Not all Teamsters are bad. Great experience, great learning platform. Roadway had been around for 100 years. They treated me very well. I was very proud to be an alum from Roadway. But at Eagle, it just took the blinders off. Now we're just not moving LTL. We're moving everything, air freight, rail, ocean freight, international. And at the time, LA, we had our own 727 aircraft. We had leased 13 727 aircraft to help, because in the dot-com bubble, if you didn't have freight delivered tomorrow, it was obsolete. Everybody was buying air freight. And if you think back, if you looked at some of the, NAFTA started in 1991, started having discussions, and we started nearshoring and moving automotive to Canada and really building out the maquiladores in Mexico during the early 90s, when I think NAFTA went in 1994. And at the same time, offshoring was becoming popular. And these tech companies were looking at opportunities to build tech for a lot less expensive, and were moving their facilities offshore. And Wall Street was giving them the okay. Wall Street was promoting it. Stock prices were raising up, so everybody starts offshoring. LTL at the time, Adrian, was a 7 to 10 day transit. You couldn't get your freight delivered faster than 7 to 10 days in the LTL market. UPS and Federal Express were still focused on that small parcel market. They weren't really doing much outside of small parcel. You think about it. A book weighs 2 pounds. You charge $20 to get it delivered next day. Why would you want anything else if you're getting $10 a pound for your freight? Well, That's where freight forwarding got very popular during that .com bubble because freight forwarding was faster than LTL and a lot cheaper than integrated providers like a FedEx or UPS. In my transition, I believe, especially for the number one domestic freight forwarder at Eagle, I think I was at the right place at the right time. And my facility was about 27 million when I started. 5 years later, we were 110 million. The company was doing 160 million when I started. 5 years later, we were $2.2 billion. Ton of mistakes. I made a ton of mistakes, man, but I learned a lot from those mistakes and I had some great mentors throughout my career. So had a really successful time there. I moved to a company by the name of Integris, Adrian, in 2002. I made the decision to leave Eagle at the same time where I won Branch of the Year. So Branch of the Year recipient award winner, I left and started at Integris. And the reason why, Adrian, is because my father told me when I was young, and he continued to tell me this throughout my career, don't ever make a decision for your business career when things are going bad. If you're going to make a tough decision or a serious decision in your career, make sure things are going well because then you're thinking clearly. And at the time, I'm a 27, 28, 29, 30-year-old kid making $200,000 plus a year. I get up at 4:30 in the morning to head into work, and I drive down to Manhattan Beach to the Spectrum Club to go work out, get my workout in, get to work. That way I beat traffic. And then come 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, I'm entertaining customers, right? I'm at the Lakers game, front row for Kobe and Shaq on their three-peat or taking customers wherever. I've got a wife and 3 kids at home. I'm up at 4:30 in the morning. They're asleep. I get home at 11 o'clock at night. They're asleep. Saturdays, we didn't have computers, accessible computers at home at that time. So Saturdays, I'm in the office. I was watching my family develop outside of me. Like I didn't feel like I was a part of the family. I come home, my kids didn't really like, is he happy? Is he sad? Should we say something? Should we not say something? And I felt that I needed a change and I wanted to become a better husband. I wanted to become a better father. I wanted to become a better servant to God. I wanted to become better with my personal finances and I wanted to do some community service. And to me, Sacramento had checked all those boxes. So when an opportunity came up for this company called Integris that I'd never heard of before, I just felt that it was meant for me. So I left Eagle. I went up to Sacramento to be the director of operations at Integris. Integris was a company, a technology based forwarder, and it was put together by some gentlemen from United Airlines that had built United Cargo to $1 billion. Jim Hartigan, the CEO of Integris, his father was a longtime CEO of United Airlines over the whole United Airlines. And Jim had worked there and was desperate to get under his father's arms. He wanted to do his own thing. He wanted to prove that he was equal. And came up with the concept that we could build a technologically driven forwarder that could be like the travel agents of the past, or, much like the Travelocity and the web portals that had been built during the .com bubble that replaced the travel agencies.
Right.
If you think back to the 50s and 60s, there's nobody's buying tickets direct from the airlines. 50s and 60s, everybody went to a travel agent. And the travel agent would negotiate with the airlines and beat them down on price, and then they would mark it up and sell to the general public. Well, when Travelocity and all those web portals came out, it cut out the travel agent. And now American Airlines, Delta Airlines, US Airways, they're all getting better margins and much improved visibility for their brand with direct consumers. So Jim Hartigan and the team thought that they could do the same thing with cargo because they had built cargo to $1 billion at United Airlines, but United never got any credit for that. It was all going through freight forwarders. So we figured with technology, we could cut out the freight forwarders and book directly with the airlines through this company called Integris. So we had $10 million invested from TCV, Telecrossover Venture, or $15 million invested from Telecrossover Ventures, $10 million invested from my old company Roadway, which is ironic in the fact that I'm now director of operations for a company that had an investment from Roadway, and $5 million from American Airlines, $5 million from Unisys. So we had a lot of money to get this thing up and running. When I first started, Roadway was the only customer. Nothing operationally had been set up. We didn't have any carriers set up. We didn't have forward air set up. We didn't have Kitty Hawk set up. We didn't have any of the tools that we needed to move freight from point A to point B. And me being in Los Angeles, with Eagle, the largest domestic freight forwarder, I had relationships with all those guys. So I was able to quickly come in, get everything set up. When I started the service with Roadway, because Roadway was our largest customer, was 67%. Within 6 months, I had the service to 92%. And Roadway was then starting to aggressively start to sell our services. And I was immediately promoted from director to vice president of operations, reporting directly to the CEO. We had a chief operating officer who resigned, and then we had a VP of ops that I replaced him, and I became the guy. So I'm the subject matter expert building this company called Integris. And we went out, and what happened with the airlines, Adrian, is that the freight forwarders got together, and the Air Freight Forwarders Association got together, and they went to the airlines and they said, if you guys try to cut us out and go work with Integris, then we're not going to give you any business. And it spoofed all the airlines. They all dropped their plans to support Integris. We had to rebuild a plan. The plan was we're going to sell to other transportation companies like LTL companies like Roadway that can't get the product there fast enough, to international forwarders that don't have a domestic presence, and to other companies. So we had Roadway, we had ABF, we had C.H. Robinson, very large truck broker, but they didn't have a forwarding operation. We
Yep.
had Panalpina, very large in Europe, and we handled their domestic services. We grew the company to $40 million in about 3 years.
Wow.
Pretty fast growth. TCV is not bothering us. We have a VC, a venture capitalist, that for 3 years outside of board meetings didn't say a peep. 3.5 years hit, and they were looking for their return on investment. And the reason they didn't say anything, Adrian, is because they were the number one investor in Netflix, and they killed with Netflix. They were the number one investor with Fandango, and Fandango is a service that offers, you can buy movie tickets online. Back then, it was a big deal. Fandango did very well. Netflix just,
Yeah.
they made so much money with Netflix, they weren't really concerned about what Integris was doing for a while. So they came to us 3.5 years in, and they were looking for an ROI. We wanted to take the company public, but after we did our research, it was going to cost about $10 million just to get the paperwork done and all the filings, the roadshow, et cetera. So we decided we were going to put the company up for sale. And that was a process that I greatly enjoyed because it was me and the CEO that went on the roadshow. And we got to talk to anybody and everybody that would listen. But in front of FedEx, spent some time in front of UPS, spent time in front of John Wehoff at C.H. Robinson, which I think is a brilliant mind. Bruce Campbell, the CEO and founder of Forward Air, is a great friend of mine. I was the one presenting the deck, and the CEO sat there and would answer any questions in between. But it was a great learning experience for me. I'm sitting in front of these boardrooms and these high-level executives painting and telling the Integra story. Panther Expedite ended up being the winning bidder at the end of the process, and we had 8 executives on the team at Integris. I was the only one retained. So they let the other 7 executives go, and then I was retained, and I was put in charge of running Integris worldwide. And I was also the vice president of Panther Air Freight worldwide. And the first year, man, I just went and sold. I flew 88,000 domestic miles and went to every city that we had a sales. We had 42 salespeople. Went to every city and made joint calls with them selling the air freight product. Because Panther Expedite was a trucking company, they didn't know how to sell air freight. I was the guy. I even woke up one night in Detroit at the West End and I didn't know where I was. 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I'm trying to figure out where I had to turn the light on, pull out the brochure. Oh, okay, I'm in Detroit. That's where I am. And then I went back to bed. But that work paid off. We grew the air freight about $70 million over a 2.5 year period. We built Panther from 110 million to 220 million and successfully sold to ABF. And then I went on and I worked at a company called Radiant Global Logistics. And Radiant was a freight forwarder founded by Bon Crane, who was another friend of mine. He had interviewed for the chief financial officer position at Integris. I voted yes, but the other members did not. We didn't hire him, which is a great thing because now he's probably worth $200 million. He's got $1 billion company that he's built with Radiant. But he had bought a company called Distribution by Air, and the CEO, after the acquisition, wasn't playing very nice. I went in and took over that facility from him. Didn't realize that his wife was the number one sales rep. Had about 6 or 7 people that, homegrown from that CEO, immediately resigned after he was terminated. So I had 185,000 square foot facility in Hawthorne, California, rocker block full of freight, and we're losing $225,000 a month. I immediately asked Bon if I could work on subletting the facility. because there was a ton of freight in there, but it didn't pay. So it wasn't paying the bills. I needed to get out of that somehow, some way. And I thought subletting it would be the best way. And they said they had tried it and it didn't work. And I said, well, let me give it a try. And, called some connections of mine. We put it on the market and we ended up subletting it to Elon Musk and SpaceX. They
Wow.
took over the facility in Hawthorne. They're still got to meet some of his people on the real estate side. Some interesting stories about their hustle and how hard they work. And they came in and immediately tore the place down and started building what Elon wanted. And I was off, and moved out to Torrance, built the company from 6 million to 30 million. One branch of the year in 2014, and wanted to go work for Jim Crane again. Everything Jim Crane turns to gold, and he had started Crane Worldwide. And I felt I had done what I needed to do at Radiant. I reached out to some people I know. Jim had by then he had already bought in Houston Astros, the Major League Baseball team,
Sure.
who had never won a championship in the history of baseball. Jim buys them in 2011. They've won 2 championships, and they've been in several since his ownership. Everything he touched turns to gold. The Floridian golf course, I believe he bought a golf course in Palm Beach, Florida, and he's turned that thing around to where it's one of the most amazing golf courses in the world. Everything Jim touches turns to gold. Great mentor of mine, and all the people there, Nelson Betcourt, Greg Weigel, Bill Fallon, just Joe Bento, just a ton of mentors. They're really my blueprint for success now is based off of what I had learned initially at Roadway, and then the mentors that I continued to have at Eagle and throughout my career. When I went back, it wasn't the same, Adrian. It was not Eagle 2.0. Jim, when I knew Jim, he was a millionaire on paper,
Yeah.
but he wasn't a billionaire. And he had aspirations. I had a personal conversation with him in 1996 where he told me to my face his goal was to own a baseball team and own his own golf course. And he did both successfully since then. But I went back and it was just a different group of guys and gals. It wasn't the same culture, it wasn't the same environment. My dad ended up getting prostate cancer, and I had spent 30 years of my career in California, and I wanted to be close to my dad. I knew there were no jobs in Louisiana, but I knew there were jobs in Texas, and I knew there were jobs in Atlanta. So I reached out to a few people, and the one that helped me out was Craig Fuller. I don't know if you know Craig. He's the owner of Freightwaves, the magazine. Craig, I reached out to him, and he got me in touch with the folks over at U.S. Express. His dad, Max, was the founder and owner of U.S. Express. And I went to run the New Caney Walmart distribution center for U.S. Express. And U.S. Express had never made money at Walmart. They had handled the business for about 6 years. They considered it a loss leader. They knew they weren't making money at it, but it gave them the opportunity to go to other companies and say, hey, we do dedicated for Walmart, which gave them an instant credibility stamp and allowed them to do business with other companies. When I got into New Caney, service was terrible. The year that I got there, losing $1.6 million. And I started on August 3rd, 2017. And I believe it was August 26th that Hurricane Harvey hit. And I'd never been in a hurricane. I guess ignorance is bliss because I drove to work every single day in the hurricane, and it gave me a distinct advantage. I know it's not very smart, but being the only one on site, that Walmart DC employed thousands of employees, and one day I was there were only 2 people there. It was me and the assistant manager, and the assistant manager lived right across the street from the DC, so he didn't have to drive to get there. But it allowed me to communicate from the ground level with the Walmart executives and with the U.S. Express executives, and I got some instant credibility from that time period. Obviously, Hurricane Harvey was terrible. I had 35 disparate drivers that lost their homes, lost their cars, lost family members. Like, it wasn't anything positive, but in that aspect, it was a positive catapult for me to get some credibility, which allowed me to do the things I needed to do to turn the place around. So 2018 it's in the Bible Belt. We're down south. I'm being told that drivers don't go to work on Sunday. It's church. You go to church on Sunday. Drivers don't go to work when the Houston Astros play, the West ball game. Drivers don't go, there's all these reasons, drivers don't go to work during the holidays. And Walmart doesn't take any holidays off. They work every day of 365 days a year. They take 12 hours off for Christmas, but that's it. So I began having one-on-one meetings and group meetings with the drivers every day, just talking things through. And one of the things I told them is, hey, you guys bring me 3 things. I know there's a million problems. I can't solve a million problems. Bring me 3 things. Get together, figure out what the 3 top things are, if I get those fixed, you guys are going to work for me. We're going to put in the work. We're going to turn this around. And they agreed, and they came up with three things. They didn't get drop pay for their first stop. So I got them $20 drop pay. I increased their drop pay from $15 to $20, and I got them drop pay. They want an increase on their cents per mile. They were getting somewhere between 36 and 56 cents per mile based off of their experience. So I increased that 5 to 10 cents based off of the individual and where they were doing the process. And they wanted me to keep out the OTR drivers that would often come into the dedicated facility and assist. Well, when they came in, when the OTR drivers come in, they would take all the good runs because you had to kind of keep those OTR guys happy, and they don't like running under 500 miles. When they're running dedicated, you got to give them the good long runs. So I told them, hey, we keep service up. I'll make all that happen. And for that Thanksgiving, we had, and Walmart had made a joke out of it, right? Super Bowl Sunday was Sunday because there was like 200 and something failures. And then Valentine's Day was the Valentine's Day massacre because there was like 186 failures. So Walmart had all these jokes, and I didn't really like these jokes. Thanksgiving, we had 17 failures. Come that Monday, I let the drivers have it. I was not pleased. A great improvement, but still, 17 was too many. And then on Christmas, we were 100%. And one of the things I did was when people showed up for work, I didn't tell them beforehand. I wasn't bribing them, Adrian. But when the drivers showed up for work, I let them know I was paying them a $400 bonus that day for coming in for Christmas. I almost lost my job. Corporate calls. They're like, you're losing 1.6 million this year and you're bribing drivers to come to work. And so I had to explain it and, hey, please, just let me do what I do. I promise you. I'm not bribing people. I didn't even let anybody know about it till they came to work. So the next year, we're 98.2% on time, 99.82% on time, and I generated $2.2 million of profit. Won the branch of the year, won most improved revenue, most improved profit, went from handling 65% of Walmart's groceries to 100%. And I also improved retention from 352%, where drivers were coming in the front door and falling out the back, and got it down to 51%. To where if a driver came on board, unless they did something awfully wrong, they weren't going anywhere. People just loved working there. And I had an open door policy. I set up my computer to where when the drivers came in, the seat was here. When I talked to the drivers, I'm talking here. I couldn't even look at my computer, so they had my full attention. And I told them, look, I have 187 drivers. You all can have 5 minutes and we can talk about business. We could talk about the ball game. We can talk about whatever you want. But 5 minutes and it has to be done unless it's your wife has brain tumor or something serious, right? And some days I'd come in, Adrian, and there'd be a line outside my door like it was a Beyonce concert, bro. It was pretty incredible and it really built a good relationship. And drivers, Adrian, have been my secret sauce my whole career, brother. I have relied on drivers because they see the customer more than any of us do. And if we just take the time to listen to what a driver says, you can learn so much. Anyway, 2.2 million. We clean sweep. There's 3 awards. We won all 3. And then we go into 2019 and we generate 3.3 million in profit. So then US Express is sending me to all the Walmart DCs. I'm going to Gas City, Indiana. I'm going to Gordonsville, West Virginia. I'm going to Henderson, North Carolina, to Roberts, Louisiana, and implementing sort of the same game plan. And we turned, I think it was 4 or 5 of their DCs into profitable centers by kind of running my play. 2020, got a divorce. It was time. I think that me and my ex-wife had grown apart at that time, and my 26-year-old and 25-year-old was still living with us, but we were about to be empty nesters, and I don't think either one of us knew what we were going to do when the kids are gone. I went and spent a year with my parents and rekindled the relationship there, kind of separated. My wife really didn't get along with my parents very well. So I took care of them during COVID, ran errands and made sure they didn't have to leave the house during COVID. And then I moved out to Las Vegas and spent a year and some time with my brother, rekindling the relationship with him. Him and I opened up a consulting business that had nothing to do with transportation, grew it to 29 clients, $700,000 run rate. We're doing very well. And then I had a college girlfriend that lived in Wexford, Pennsylvania, who had just gone through a divorce and asked me to move out here to help her out. And I'm a free spirit at the time. I'm going to do whatever. And so I flew out here, and I didn't realize that when you're running a consulting business, that your clients like you to be local. The 29 clients that I had, I thought I could be here and everything would be fine, but I started losing them really quick. So I knew I had to get back to work. So I came back into the business, worked at a company called Elite Transit Solutions here locally in Pittsburgh. Great little company. Michael Johnson was the CEO. He had built $100 million truck brokerage in a 10-year time period, had been very successful, had some A-list customers, just done a phenomenal job. And really, I started off as the night ops manager. Didn't want to come in with the big title. I just wanted to walk before I run. And it was pretty apparent quick that I started making some moves, and I'd gotten rid of some people that they had been trying to get rid of for years, and productivity was up 54%. So I got invited to Phoenix to go golfing with the owner and his VP. He wanted to kind of feel me out, see what I was all about. So we spent a weekend together, and then I was promoted to director of customer support a few months after I started. And then a few months later, I was promoted to vice president of sales. And once I got him to open up the kimono, I realized financially we were in some trouble. He didn't have a CFO at the time, and the cash flow wasn't a pretty sight. So I recommended to him through the relationships I had built at Integris and Panther with the different VCs and investment bankers I'd worked with that we go out and raise some capital, man. You're like, got a 10-year company, you've got all-star clients, Fortune 100 clients, never taken investment before. This should be pretty easy. About 20 calls into it, I'm like, I don't think this is going to happen. I told Michael, I said, look, you have the cadence down. You're doing a great job on the calls. You don't need me to do this anymore with you. Why don't you let me use my contacts and relationships to go find us a home, or at least find a subset of the people a home to keep this thing going? So he agreed, and a lot of CEOs are incurable optimists. Michael was one of them, curable optimists. He really felt that he was going to get finance, and so I went and talked to about 12 CEOs that I know in the industry, tried to find the perfect fit, and figured at the 10th hour that Circle was the right place for us to be. Convinced Michael Johnson to release us from our non-competitions and non-competes. And, thankful to him being a real man, wanting his employees to do well, he let us go. And he didn't have to. And I give him a lot of credit for that, Adrian. That's a hard decision for an incurable optimist on the baby that he had built for 10 years just to let it go. But he did. And then I had to convince Niagara, one of our largest customers, who had just tried the same thing with some executives from Convoy that had failed miserably, to give us a chance to move over to Circle and take us on as an incumbent. I took 13 of the best out of the 220 employees we had, and I had to convince them to come over to Circle with me and to trust me, even though I'd been there for less than a year. And then I had to convince Eric Fortmeyer at Circle, the CEO, to take all of us on with the base account of Niagara, which he had handled in the past and failed at. He didn't think there was an opportunity to make money at the account. But I had a 20-year relationship with him. Funny story, before he started Circle, him and I were at a trade show and had a good dinner. We're both students of the game. We're chopping it up. He asked me at that end of that dinner, hey, man, we should start a brokerage together. This is right when Panther had brought me over. And I said, no, man, you need to come run the brokerage at Panther. And he was like, well, if you can get me a meeting with Andy Clark, the CEO, then I'll see what's up. So I got him a meeting. Things didn't work out. He ends up opening Circle. Now, all this time later, I'm working for him after he built a $700 million truck brokerage, and I got my donkey suit on.
Amazing story, Michael. Really fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. And okay, so you've been through this fascinating journey to where you are today. What is the future hold for Circle? So you've got to where you've got to. What are your key milestones going forward?
Yeah, so we're building towards $1 billion. We're really trying to attract equal to or better than at the branch level. We're trying to bring on new branch leaders to expand. When I started, the company had 14 branches. At November of 2023, we had 14 branches. We're up to 21 branches now and looking to expand that even more. We're looking at the nearshoring opportunities. We're expanding into Mexico, making sure we're there for that maquiladores. And if any of the reshoring or nearshoring comes our way, we want to be ready in both Mexico and Canada. And then it's hard to say. If you look at freight forwarding, I think freight forwarding had its run. I think freight forwarding was tremendous in the 90s when LTL was 7 to 10 days. Now LTL's 2 to 4 days. So it's not a distinct advantage anymore. If you look at the airlines sort of adopting the Southwest model, taking a lot of capacity out of the sky. Well, Delta used to fly 32 wide body aircrafts on a daily basis. There's hardly any wide body aircraft flying domestically in the United States anymore.
Right.
And then FedEx, they bought roadway services. So now FedEx Ground, FedEx Custom Critical, FedEx is doing everything for everybody. UPS is doing the same. So it kind of crunches that freight forward. So if you look at freight forwarding, all the freight forwarders became international. That's where the opportunity was. Well, depending on what's going to go on with these tariffs, and if reshoring and nearshoring comes into place, then where does that leave the forwarders? So I don't know if we'll get into the forwarding business per se, but I could see us doing a lot more around warehousing, a lot more around freight management, and
Right.
trying to solve customer problems. There's always going to be problems to solve. We just need to figure out which ones are there. And right
Well,
now, Adrian, honestly, the industry's going through a cleanse. 18,000 truck companies prior to deregulation.
right.
1.2 million entities, according to the FMCSA today. We have too many. No, it's simple economics. Way too much supply and not enough demand. A lot of these companies over the next few years are going to be consolidated or pushed out, and only the strongest survive. And Circle's in that position. We're strong. We will survive. Just a bigger piece of the pie for those that are left to survive through the cleanse.
Thank you, Michael. That's really interesting. So, what I'd love to hear about that breadth of experience that you've just discussed. What are you seeing out there in the market from a key trends perspective, ranging from anything from what are the tariffs having an impact on the sector? Are there any workforce challenges you're experiencing? Whatever you want to see out there.
Yeah, Adrian, I think in order to understand the present, we need to understand the past. If briefly, I know I covered some of this on the last podcast, but if you look at the supply chain industry, you take it back to Japan after the World War. Japan needed to figure out a way to make an automobile that was very high quality, but at the same time, not very expensive. And based on the way that they saw the Western world doing things, they didn't feel like they had enough space or enough capital to really build their automotive industry around that. Toyota at the time was partnered with the Japanese government. They began just in time. They didn't have the big warehouse spaces. They didn't have the capital. They figured a way to reduce expenses through just in time.
Nichi Ono, wasn't it the purveyor of the Toyotas?
Yes, sir. So you fast forward to the late 60s, you'll see that the Japanese also led the global economy with the FM transmitter. During the electronics boom, the FM transmitter was obviously instrumental, and we started seeing products like Sony, et cetera, come out. And then I think globally, we started to look at just in time as a key secret ingredient to some of Japan's success. And in the 80s and 90s, you start to see adoption. You talked about you have a Six Sigma black belt. I have a Six Sigma yellow belt. And globally, everybody started to sort of adopt the lean manufacturing process. The way that ties into logistics, if you go back and again, 1980, when we signed the Motor Carrier Act, when Jimmy Carter, the president, signed the Motor Carrier Act, and it opened up the transportation world to a lot more folks, then you can also understand with lean manufacturing, it changed the way transportation was handled. Right? 7 to 10 day transit times on LTL were no longer accepted. We had to speed up transit times to meet the needs of JIT or lean manufacturing. You fast forward to 2018, where we call it a carrier market. At the time, there were somewhere around 350,000 to 400,000 owner operators in the marketplace, truck drivers. Extreme shortage. I was working at an asset-based company at the time that was offering $50,000 bonuses for any driver that would sign up with our company. And we would also pay the $15,000 to send somebody to trucking school to get their CDL. From 2008 to 2025, it goes from 350,000 to somewhere between 800 and 900,000 owner operators in the marketplace. Just an explosion. Now we went from a carrier market to a customer market, right? You look at economy, supply and demand. Supply is way up here, demand's lower than the supply, and we're in the situation that we're currently into today. As I stated in the last conversation, we're going through a cleanse right now. Right now, there's too much capacity in the marketplace. That capacity needs to right size, and we need to figure out how we move forward. And I think that's what the market's trying to figure out right now. If you look at, any periodical out there, you'll hear about thousands of trucking companies going out of business constantly. And that churn will continue to happen until the demand either equals the supply or increases above the supply and it comes back to a carrier market. It's sort of cyclical in our business. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe that's kind of where we are right now in this cleanse phase.
And do you see anything on the horizon from the flipping of the market, or is it still figuring that out?
That's probably $1 billion question. I wish I had the answer.
Crystal ball.
Right. But what I would say is that it has been cyclical over time. If you look at the history of it, it's like a roller coaster, goes up, it goes down. Once the market is right size, and I think AI is going to have a big place in that as AI continues to improve from a robotic standpoint. I have a customer currently, Adrian, to where their facility is almost completely run by robots. They have a yard dog that we call him a goat in our industry. I don't know what the term is, but it's a truck that moves trailers in and out of the dock, pulls trailers from the yard, brings it to the dock. It's completely autonomous. There's not a human being in it.
Wow.
Then on their dock in their warehouse, they have robots that run the warehouse. The robots do the pick and pack and load and unload the trailers. You have some humans that oversee it, but it's the robots through AI and autonomy that is running the whole deal. So, um, from Circle's perspective, we've adopted some AI technology. We were an early adopter of Happy Robot, which has been like a customer service person for us. If you think about when we post a load on the dashboard, and let's say there's 200 drivers that are interested in that load. Physically, it's very difficult for us to answer all 200 of those calls if they're coming in simultaneously. Well, Happy Robot can, right? The robot can answer all of these calls at the same time. Not only are we touching more of our what I call carrier partners, every truck driver in the marketplace is a partner of mine. Our carrier partners are getting good information and good feedback, and they're getting to us with their opportunities. We're also getting a good price. If we talk to 200 drivers, we're probably going to get a better price than if we talk to 5. AI has allowed us to do that. I think the continued improvement in generative AI and what AI is bringing to the table and decreasing the amount of hallucination, I think puts us in a much better position to deploy a lot of the technology that's currently in the marketplace. And when you look at companies, size and scope is going to make a difference during this cleanse. If you can't afford the technology, then you're going to get left behind. If you can't afford to bring on additional drivers and, add autonomy to some of their daily tasks, you're not going to be able to hang on. So what I see during this cleanse is the AI revolution is going to exponentially speed that process up, and you'll see a lot less carriers, but those carriers will have a lot more ability to service the customer.
Wow, that's really fascinating perspective, and it's interesting that you're looking at AI both from an automation on the warehouse floor, the robotic side, and with that automated trucks, but also operationally. So it seems you have a holistic approach across your whole enterprise that AI can drive real value.
In my opinion, if you want to be at the forefront of everything that's going on in our industry, you have to be a student of the game.
Yeah.
And I try to stay close. I try to talk to as many customers as possible. And I also think that autonomous trucking, at least in the United States from a national level, is on its way. I think that we have some large opportunities on the infrastructure side that we're going to have to deal with. We have some bad roads. 8,000 bridges, I believe, are in desperate need of repair, et cetera. I think that's a ways off, but a lot of the other technology that's coming about, it's almost, when it's available today, you can almost implement it tomorrow.
Amazing. Are you looking at extending further and further your engagement in the automation space using AI, or are you having a trial exercise, see where you go, and then learn the lessons from that and look to optimize in the future?
Yeah, I believe that AI is coming. Whether you decide to adopt it or not, it's going to be here. And right now, we're taking a holistic approach. We were early adopters with Happy Robot. We're definitely, due to our alliance with Google, deeply integrated with Gemini. And
Right.
then GPT-5 is very interesting to us. I use Centra AI. They give me 12 assistants to do everything from read my emails to post LinkedIn posts for me. And all of this makes me much more efficient so I can focus on the acquisition of new customers. I'm not
Yeah.
spending 4 hours in my email. I'm not spending 2 hours going through LinkedIn and trying to figure out what I should post next to get, from a marketing perspective. I call it the 80-20 rule. If I can have technology handle 80% of my mundane task, then I can spend 100% of my time on the 20% of the things that really need my attention and focus. I just feel it's a great use of time, and I'm excited about the future. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this since there were no cell phones and no laptops, brother. You know what I mean?
We won't cover the carrier pigeon era quite yet. But you mentioned last time, I remember we chatted, I was fascinated by a comment you made, Michael, regarding drivers being the lifeblood, right? Or key asset for a freight business. How are they adapting to this new world of automated trucks, of AI agents? It feels that there could be a disruptive element in adopting AI with that key asset of a business.
Yeah, truck drivers are a unique group of individuals. Most truck drivers choose the route of being a driver because they don't want to sit behind a desk all day. So they'd rather be independent and on the road. Keep on trucking motto of the 1970s. There's slow adoption to new technologies. You go back to 2017, 2018 when we were putting onboard cameras in their vehicles that measured everything that was going on outside the vehicle and monitored what they were doing inside the vehicle. It was the big brothers watching sort of feeling that they got from that technology. But I think drivers have since learned that it decreases accidents by a ton. It helps improve their driving skills. And it's also a great defense mechanism when there is an unfortunate opportunity. They have the camera that was right there recording it. As new technologies come on board, I can remember having arguments with drivers about going from stick shift to automatic. Drivers are going to be slow to adapt to the new technologies, but once they see the benefit and they can see that it's putting money in their pocket, they usually come on board pretty quickly. They're just like any of us. Nobody likes change.
Exactly. No, I think it's a great perspective. So obviously you guys at Circle, you're adopting technology, you're at the bleeding edge of that push and focusing on your customers generally. What are you looking as the next step in growth, in product wise or geographical expansion? What is the key focus for Circle over the next 12 to 24 months?
We're really focused on building towards a billion. And that's a mantra that our CEO, Eric, and his partner, Chad, have ingrained in all of us. That's the end goal. In order to build to a billion, there has to be expansions. If you look at it from when I opened my branch with Circle in November of 2023, there were 14 branches. If you look at today, we have 21. We're extending our geographic presence, and we're not doing it just by throwing a body in place. We're going out and finding the best in the business. We hire equal to or better than at every position. And once we find those individuals, we bring them on, we allow them to open up their own branch, and we give them the resources and the tools in order for them to be successful. We grew to $700 million, 100% organic, no outside investment, no acquisitions, and we've done it organically. And really, I took my 35 years of experience and threw it in the trash and followed the playbook that Eric Fortmeyer had put forth to be successful. That's what it has allowed my branch to grow so much, just by running his playbook. He's a brilliant mind, he's a visionary, and everything that he brings to the table seems to work. I don't have an issue with him being a mentor or me following his lead.
Fantastic. Look, it sounds like so you guys have really got your ship tight and you're looking for a great opportunity in the future. For those guys out there looking who want to find out more about what Circle Logistics do, where can they get that information, Michael?
They can reach out to myself. My email is michael.stjulien, that's STJULIEN, at circledelivers.com, and I'll make sure they get to the appropriate people. We have a recruiting team that's by far outstanding and top notch. We have an HR group that is very welcoming and makes everybody feel like a family. I think that if there's individuals out there that are ready to put in the work to be successful, then Circle's a great platform for them to do that.
I say, well, listen, we'll make sure that we include all those links in the description of the podcast when it goes out, because I'm sure there'll be many people out there interested to find out more about you guys. So thank you for that. And listen, thanks everybody out there for watching this episode of the AI Ripple Effect. It has been an absolute pleasure to have Michael St. Julien from Circle Logistics as a guest. Fascinating podcast. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode.